All right, welcome to the Sweet Science of Fighting podcast. Today we have Nick Garcia. Welcome, Nick.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. I'm relatively new to the fight game or the grappling game, but I really enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed watching it my whole life. But I'm 4 or 5 years in, so I'm fairly new, I guess you'd say.
No, awesome. Do you want to maybe just move your camera down just a little bit? I think it's blocking off your face. Maybe it's because you're... Yeah, perfect. There we go. No, that's too far now.
Tell me when.
Yeah, perfect.
Right there.
No, we're good right there. Awesome. Yeah, so do you want to maybe give a brief background about you? I mean, you said you're relatively new to the grappling game, but you're not relatively new to the strength and conditioning game. So do you want to maybe dive into a little bit of that?
Yeah, so as far as the strength and conditioning game, I knew I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach or athletic development coach when I was in high school. And it was my sophomore year, and at that time, Nebraska football was the epitome of strength and conditioning. They were dominating in football, and I wanted to be a good football player as well. And at this time in high school, in 95, 94, around that time, strength and conditioning wasn't a big deal then. Like, it was like people lifted, and we had 3 squat racks in a small room, probably, a 20 by 20 room with 3 squat racks. The guys who showed up trained and got stronger, and it was a different time. But in order to get stronger, I said, well, I saw this ad for Make the Play by Boyd Epley, and it was a Make the Play Nebraska program that they came out with, and I ordered it, and I still have the VHS tape today and the actual program that they sent today with the flyer. It said like June 6th, Nebraska football camp, strength and conditioning camp. 1990, whatever, 5 or 6 or something. So I still have it, and I kept it. And it's interesting because I have a lot of guys come here and recruit, and Nebraska came by, and I said, look at this. And I showed them. They took pictures of it because they wanted to show Coach Epley because he still works at that facility or at Nebraska, or is involved with it still. But after high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I went to junior college first and got into shot putting, and actually that set my whole athletic career off and my strength and conditioning career off. I got a good college coach at Northridge, Cal State Northridge, was very structured, and I learned everything I could from him, Glenn McAtee. And it was very, very structured, and there was a plan for everything and a system for everything. And to this day, I'm still a systems guy. I've went my own way as far as strength and conditioning goes. I still use a huge part that I learned from him, but my programming and things are a little bit different than what we did back then. But that's kind of my history of it, and the way I got the strength and conditioning job at Notre Dame High is I started working with the throwers there, and my throwers got really good really fast. They were part of the football team, and they got strong fast as well. And so when they saw the results of that, I started working with the whole program as far as football goes. Then it evolved into baseball, the whole school, and I kind of created my own job, so that's what I do now.
Oh, that's awesome. So be the perfect person to dive into strength conditioning for jiu-jitsu today. Obviously, you've found a love for jiu-jitsu semi recently, but not too recent as well, and you've obviously got some good experience behind you within strength conditioning as a coach as well. So do you maybe start with your philosophy behind strength training in general, or maybe it's just strength training for sport, because kind of all encompasses together anyway?
Well, I think that, we talked about this before a little while ago. There's guys who are Olympic lifting guys, there's guys who are powerlifting guys, there's guys who don't believe in Olympic lifts, and you can get away without them, etc. I'm kind of an everything guy as far as my philosophy goes. My whole goal here is to prepare high school students for college. And so when we have 4- and 5-star athletes we have 3 of them this year that are going to University of Houston for basketball, Duke for basketball, and Gonzaga, I reach out to the strength coaches, say, hey, what do you want them to be prepared for when you get there? So there's a whole wide range of philosophies at those levels. So I try to cover everything as far as teaching them how to Olympic lift, teaching them how to squat properly, that type of stuff. So that's the main thing. But I do not believe that you need to be a great Olympic lifter to be a great football player, or a great Olympic lifter to be a great shot putter or discus thrower. There's lots of things that work for different people, and I've done it where I've got guys really, really strong, and went that route, and then I've done it where currently I have a kid named Kai Dynas who's throwing 199 feet in the discus as a junior and 63.5 in the shot. And we train at 70%. We do Dr. Bondarchuk system, which is the complete opposite of maximal strength type stuff. So I do it all kinds of different ways, and my philosophy is to be open-minded. And furthermore, there's been a big debate right now against two, like, they posted a picture of King Kong versus Godzilla, of like Vern Gambetta and Mike Boyle kind of going at it on Twitter. Did you see that? And Vern's one of my mentors. So it's a real big thing to give credit where credit is due. Like my systems that I've developed, like I developed my own system, but it came from Vern. It came from Glenn McAtee, Dan Lang, who was the throws coach at USC, John Smith, and who's a big strength type guy at Ole Miss. Like he's really into the whole strength side of things. So it came from a bunch of different philosophies, and my whole thing is to be open-minded. Different things work for different people and different athletes, and expose them to a wide variety of different movements and different lifts, so they have experience in all parts of dumbbell training, kettlebell training, Olympic lifting, powerlifting, etc.
Nice. Do you want to maybe dive a little bit into Bondarchuk's system? I've had Martin on previously talking about kind of the periodization and kind of the overview of how it works, but you're really nailing it down with that high school setting. So you want to maybe run through how that system works, how you're kind of using it, and if that would be applicable or possible with the jiu-jitsu athlete.
So as far as I use it pretty much with just individual sport athletes. If they play football and do track, it's a challenging thing to do. But if they're just track athletes, we do it with just track athletes. And you mentioned periodization. Typically, when we periodize the traditional way, we tell the athlete when they're going to be ready. So we drop the volume, increase the intensity, or make it medium, however you want to say it. We manipulate that stuff and say, okay, you're going to be unloaded here, so you should feel good here in a sense, right? So we tell them and we manipulate and say, this is when you're going to be ready. The Dr. Bondarchuk system is different. And the way it's different is each individual athlete's body is ready when their body says they're ready. And the whole thing of that is to find when they adapt and when they hit peak form. And so the gist of it is that you pick a competitive exercise. In my sport, track and field, it would be the throwing. So you would pick 3 implements. Let's say I'm going to throw a 14-pound shot, a 15-pound shot, and a 16-pound shot. So those are my competitive exercises. And these are the classifications. Like CE is competitive exercise. That's a classification. The next classification would be SDE, specific development exercise. That's something that mimics the actual movement, but it's not using the same implement. Like, we're not using a shot. We may be doing a stand throw with a 35-pound kettlebell. Or in the discus, you might be doing a stand throw with a 15-pound dumbbell. Somewhere along those lines. And then you go to your specific preparatory exercises. These are exercises that use the same muscles as the actual movement of the throw, but it's not in the same pattern. Like, so, cleans, snatches, basically they're called global lifts. So your Olympic lifts and your traditional power lifts, your hex bar dead, your squat, your bench, or variations of your step ups, things like that. Following that, and your bench press. Following that, we have the last classification, which is GPE, and that's general preparatory exercises. And basically the way we do it is we do one abdominal exercise, one twisting exercise, which is our transverse plane. Abdominal would be obviously sagittal plane. One back exercise and one frontal plane exercise. So it kind of covers the whole realm of the core and some back stuff as well. And it covers all 3 planes. So a typical cycle would be your competitive exercise, 2 to 3 SDEs. If you're a hammer thrower, 1 SDE, and then 2 to 3 SPEs. And if you're a hammer thrower, you kind of take out bench press, but if you're a discus and shot putter, you leave that in. So that would be 3 SPEs. And then finally, your GPE circuit. And you do the same thing every single day. So it's the same thing every day at roughly 70% of your max. And you chart the distance of the throws. So I take the same amount of throws with the same implements in the same order. I do the same amount of lifting each day with the same exercises with the same intensity. And I track my throws to keep track of when I'm at peak form versus when I'm not at peak form. And you'll see peaks and valleys, and then when you'll see a big peak, it'll level off, and then you'll have a big drop off. And that big drop-off is you're done with peak form, and you've adapted, and so you got to change. And the whole goal is to figure out the pattern of right before that drop-off, we want to know we're going to hit peak form, and you want to be done with that before you hit that drop-off so you can switch everything. And some athletes, it takes 18 to 25 sessions. Some athletes, it's 40 sessions. Everybody's a little bit different. And that's how the system works. And it's the same. If you do it right each time, it's the same pattern every single time. And that's basically the gist of the Dr. B system. It sounds extremely complicated, but it's actually a really easy system to run.
Would that be possible in a sport like jiu-jitsu where you don't have, I guess, something that you can measure every day in terms of performance that would be jiu-jitsu? Would you have to use something like a throw as almost like a proxy?
Yeah, a throw or a jump. So what I would do with sports kind of like that necessarily don't have a closed movement. Like I would classify shot put or discus as a cyclical movement, right? Because it's kind of the same thing every time. Jiu-jitsu is not like that. Golf's not like that because you have different clubs, different lengths, etc. So, yes, in order to do that, you would do a vertical jump or a med ball heave for distance right when you get done warming up. Like, let's say we get on the mats, we do our warm-up, which is, maybe some side stripping, some regular stripping, some front, reverse stripping. We do all our different warm-up stuff, and then we go do our test. So we're going to test our vertical jump 3 times, chart that in Excel, and then we go to our training. And so then maybe you would okay, we get done with our training. That's more of our competitive exercise. So then we'll go to our specific development exercise. And in jiu-jitsu, that could be maybe a glute bridge with a floor press with the bench. That could be your specific development exercise for that because it's very specific to trapping and rolling or elbow escaping, etc. And then we would do something for our SPEs, like maybe a Bulgarian split squat or something that is very similar to the movements we do in jiu-jitsu, the many movements. Or maybe let's say a jammer press, because if you're trying to go in for a double leg, it's very similar, to that same movement as you step. And then we would do our core exercises that relate to jiu-jitsu. And you could definitely do it. It's just a little more challenging with the fact that you have to go in there and test something first before you start your training.
Yeah. Because you would have, if you were to do that every day as well, as you mentioned, obviously you have training on the mat, so that training on the mats would almost impact the following exercises you're going to do in the gym if you're going to do it straight after.
Theoretically, yes, absolutely. Now, you usually go 2 days on, 1 day off. There's a few ways we do it, 2 days on, 1 day off. If you're a person who likes to set schedule, you would go 3 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off, because then you're training Monday through Wednesday, off Thursday, Friday, Saturday, off Sunday. If it's 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off, it's different every week. But that 2 on, 1 off throws in an extra day of rest every now and then, so that helps a little more as well. But the whole key there is adaptation. So if you're rolling every day and you do it in that sense, then your body's going to adapt to that each day. You obviously get less sore the more you roll every day, and same thing as lifting. You have that stuff together, so it should work in the same way. But the only thing I would recommend, if you do 5 rounds a day rolling, then I would say make sure it's 5 rounds every day. It's not 8 rounds one day and 2 rounds another day. You got to do the same thing all the time for it to work perfectly.
Interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. Interesting concept. So different to, I guess, how we normally train or traditionally plan something, because as you mentioned, you're manipulating variables, peaking for whatever that thing is. You have a set structure, and that program changes almost depending on the cycle, potentially week to week based on the intensity and volumes changing or whatever. But obviously with the system, same thing every day. And then as you adapt, you're looking to potentially, change the exercises then to start to spur different adaptation?
Yeah, so what you do is once like I named the classifications. So we have 4 classifications. We have the CE, the SDE, the SPE, and the GPE. Now, those 4 classifications, that's called a developmental cycle. And when you're done with that developmental cycle, when you know you hit peak form and you're starting to drop off, then you go to what we call a cleanse cycle. And a cleanse cycle is basically bodyweight movements, 5 bodyweight circuits or 4 bodyweight circuits. And you do that every day. And you do that for 15 to 20 sessions. and that washes you out of all the exercises you did before. It's all body weight. It's just, very like you're staying active. You're keeping the muscles active while washing out those old exercises. And then you move into another developmental cycle, if that makes sense. And so there's 3 cycle classifications. There's developmental cycle, which we had just talked about. There's the rest cycle or cleanse cycle that I just talked about. And then there is a maintenance cycle. Now, maintenance cycle, if you're, let's take, for example, since the people listening to this are grappling fight type fans, let's take ADCC, for example, right? So my objective would be to hit peak form at ADCC. Like those 2 days, 3 days, I want to be feeling my best, performing my best physically, etc. So if let's take Gordon Ryan, for example, he had a fight against Felipe, a few weeks before that, right? Felipe Pena, correct? Yeah. So that's an important fight to him because, he talked a lot of stuff and he wanted to make sure he won that fight. And then he also has a way to win ADCC. So let's say that he had himself hit peak form for Felipe Pena fight. Then he had to hold that peak. And so that's called a maintenance cycle. And when you do that maintenance cycle, every 2 weeks you change the exercises, all of them. And that holds your peak form. Now, I have data, in the throwing that proves that it works perfectly. In the throws, you want to be plus or minus in the shot put 30 centimeters every competition when you're in maintenance form, and it works extremely good. Like I've held peak form for a long period of time doing it that way. There's all you change all every exercise, so between 7 and 8, depending on what you're doing, of those in those classifications. But we started doing it another way called terracing, and it works the same way, but you don't change all the exercises. So once you hit peak form, you say, okay, I have to go on maintenance now. So I'm only going to change the competitive exercise. Okay, so let's say instead of going 5 rounds of rolling, or sparring, you go 3 rounds this time. And then you do that for 2 workouts and do everything else the same as the previous developmental cycle. Then you have to change the SDE, the specific development exercise. So you change that after 2 sessions. So at 4 sessions now, you have new rolling or new sparring rounds or levels of sparring rounds and new specific development exercise. Then after 2 movements, you have, or 2 sessions, you change the SPEs. So now I'm going to change my clean to a snatch. And then 2 more, I'm going to change my squat to a step up. And then 2 more, I'm going to change my bench to a floor press. And so now we're at 8 sessions now, and so you almost have the entire thing new. 2 more sessions, you'll change all the GPA exercises to 4 new ones. So after about 10 to 11 sessions, everything's new again. And then you just keep repeating that sequence. Every 2 sessions, you switch a classification, every 2 sessions. And that works really well as well because you have a new stimulus each time, but it doesn't shock the body so much by changing everything, and you don't really get sore, right? So that's another way you can look at doing a maintenance cycle. So if I was...
Is it that novel stimulus that is kind of keeping that peak there just because it's something new, and that's kind of the thing?
Exactly that. So after, like I said, 10 or 12 sessions, depending on how many exercises you have in there or classifications, you start over all new again. So you're not shocking the system with a whole complete change of all 6 or all 4 classifications and all 8 to 9 exercises. You just switch one every 2 sessions. It gives you that little bit of stimulus, but it keeps the rest of the body kind of stable so you don't get sore and feel a little beat up for the first couple sessions. Does that make sense?
I guess that makes sense. I guess the question is, what kind of, if someone's maybe a hobbyist or likes to compete, what kind of person would benefit from doing a program like this? Because I can imagine a lot of people would find it boring doing the same thing 2 on 1 off or 3 on 1 off or whatever it is, but it's exactly the same day in, day out, same weights, same exercises.
Well, I think a very disciplined person would benefit greatly from this, and I also think that people who may not be confident in their movements of all lifting movements would benefit from this because you're doing the same thing every day. So you're going to get good at that, and the body's going to figure it out. The body eventually figures it out. This is a Vern Gambetta term. The body will figure it out properly, and everybody has their own movement characteristics on how they, you could take Lasha in the clean and somebody else in the clean, and they will both have very proficient technique, but they're going to look extremely different just because they're different body styles and maybe have different mannerisms, if that makes sense. So I think that somebody who maybe not as how do I say it, very, very has great technique or not as experienced in the lifts that they're trying to use, they'll get really good at them really, really fast because they're doing it every day. And so by the end, you're very good at that movement. It's something like with a 1x20, where the whole goal there is to get good at the movement, get stronger. And when you adapt to that movement, then you change that movement to something else. It's very much like that. So a disciplined person and somebody who needs to get better at maybe some specific movements in their lifting regimen or their lifting toolbox.
Nice. I want to also dive into your training schedule as well and how you've managed to balance the idea of strength training and jiu-jitsu, because a lot of people struggle in that area. And I think that's probably the biggest, determinant for people not getting to the gym as a jiu-jitsu athlete, is that balance. Because one, they either feel too sore from what they've done in the gym, which negatively affects their training on the mat, or two, they feel like they lose flexibility from training in the gym and then come into the mat. So do you want to maybe dive into kind of how you've managed to structure it?
Yeah, and I've got a perfect thing for the whole flexibility thing. So typically I train at night from 6 to 8 typically is what time I train in jiu-jitsu. And I try, I do no-gi twice a week, and I do gi twice a week. So I get both forms. And actually, when you do gi, your fingers get a little more, and your hands get more sore because you're grabbing the gi a whole bunch, the lapel chokes and whatnot. But I'll usually try and get up extra early and do my lifting early in the morning before my day starts. And it's very important to me. I feel much better when I get done lifting. And I know that will benefit at least I feel it benefits my jiu-jitsu. And the way I structure my workouts, I train typically on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It doesn't matter if I do jiu-jitsu that night or don't do jiu-jitsu that night. I still train, however it falls on the schedule. And I set it up. I have I call them 3 modules. Some people call them pods or trisets, etc. And it's set up the same way each day, but with different movements. So, for example, module 1 is an explosive movement, a core movement, and a prehab movement. So injury prevention type movement. I know people don't like that word all the time. And then I actually have my training right here. And then the second you go through that, I usually do 3 sets of each movement, between 3 to 5 reps, depending on the week. Then the second module of the day, after I get done with those three sets, I move on to the next module, which is a lower body movement, a upper body pulling movement, and a mobility movement. Now, this mobility movement is going to prepare me for the upper body pushing movement, which is going to be coming in module 3. So module 3 is going to be a hinge hit movement, a upper body pushing movement, and then another mobility movement. And that mobility movement counters what made me tight from module 2's lower body movement. So if I'm squatting, I'm going to do like a pigeon stretch or a supported pigeon stretch, something along those lines, to go ahead and make sure that I still stay mobile, even though I might be squatting heavy. So is all that making clear so far? Making sense? So those 3 modules per day. And I got this from watching Shannon Turley train, who was a strength coach at Stanford when they were extremely good at football. And there's a junior college coach out here named Robert Dos Remedios who also uses a very similar system to that, where I grab that stuff from and I kind of delve my own system. Now, 3 sessions a week, that would be what a typical session would look like. Now, on session 1, day 1, I use more a traditional thing. So I'll do my cleans, my front squats, my normal style bench press on those days, still with the other things I mentioned, the mobility and the upper body pulling on there, and my hinge hip, etc. Day 2, and that's more of a bilateral day. Day 2 is more of a unilateral day, which you and I both know is obviously more specific to a jiu-jitsu style workout. So much stuff is unilateral, and you're moving one leg in one place and one arm in another place. So that day, I do my explosive movement. That's typically like some kind of one-arm snatch or one-arm high pull with dumbbells or kettlebells. My core movement is going to be, if I did a sagittal core movement on day 1, I'm going to do a frontal plane core movement on day 2, or a transverse one. And my lower body movement is typically some type of kettlebell, Bulgarian split squat, or goblet, Bulgarians and goblet squats, something like that. So everything's very much unilateral. My dumbbell stuff, my bench, my pressing stuff will either be like some eccentric dips, things like that, or I call them tempo, maybe not so much eccentric, but we do it with a tempo on the way down and explode on the way up. And I usually tend to use the velocity-based training for all my training. So tempo on the way down, 4 seconds on the way down, and then explode on the way up. So that would be more like day 2, is all mostly unilateral, trying to work different planes that I did on the first day. And day 3 is what I call my super jiu-jitsu specific day. I do everything. It still follows the same format. We got explosive movement, we got core movement, we got prehab, all that stuff. But here, I do everything for time. 30 seconds on, 10 seconds off, or 15 seconds off. Because when you're pinned or you're mounted on somebody, most beginners are in a big rush to try and get a submission or whatever, but you also want to apply pressure, or you're getting applied pressure on you if you're unfortunate enough to be on the bottom, and you kind of got to relax a little bit. And so that's kind of your 10 or 15 seconds off before you hit a big burst. In my mind, that's how I train. And here I do like lots of carries. So in a sense, my lower body movement would be more of what I call surrenders. So I put a band around my body, and it's attached fairly low on a rack, and I have it around my shoulders and my neck. And I go down to my knees and then up on my feet. Down on my knees, up on my feet. Down on my knees, up on my feet. One side at a time for time. And then I'll do, for a carry, I'll do a heavy farmer's walk. For grip strength, I'll do a dead hang holding on to ropes or towels. That's my real jiu-jitsu specific day. And I don't want to fail to mention that not only do I mix that with jiu-jitsu specific training, but I also, there's a guy named Peter Attia who I listen to all the time, and he's more of a longevity specialist. And, grip strength and things like that are a major tell in how long you're able to live, so they say, right? And so that's why I mix those carries in as well, and the grip strength stuff as well, because there's certain things that he has come across, or data he has come across, where if you could farmer's walk your body weight for 2 minutes, then you're probably going to have a long life. There's data that shows that. And for those of you who think I'm full of crap, listen to his podcast. I believe it. If you can, dead hang for a certain amount of time, and you're 40 years old, which I am 43, then you're above the curve, and you have a higher chance of living a longer life. So I mix those two together. So does all that make sense? How I set everything up? So I got a bilateral day, which is more traditional Olympic lifting type stuff. And then I have a unilateral day, which is everything's unilaterally done. And then I have a really jiu-jitsu specific day where everything's for time and rounds and things like that as far as I lift. So that's how I evolved it. It's been fun and unique for me to be able to do something like that, to kind of get specific to jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, nice. You mentioned you train jiu-jitsu 4 times a week. How, I guess, in terms of the extra grip training, how many times a week of jiu-jitsu would you think you would need to train to kind of pull back some of that grip training? Do you think that can always be in there regardless of how much you're training?
I think it depends what level you're at. Like, if you look at some of the high level guys, like, Kurt Oriander, like I see videos of him, he's got tape all over his fingers. These guys so I don't know, like, you can sustain that if they're training, 8 to 10 hours a day or whatever they're training every single day and teaching class. And I think without the gi, you can do it. But with the gi, it's way, in my mind, it's way different. I'm not some expert, but it's way different to me. To me, gi's a little more stressful because you also have to worry about getting choked by the gi, right? No gi, you don't have to worry about necessarily getting choked with a lapel or something, or somebody sneaking your lapel, the bottom lapel up and choking you with that or whatever. So, it's a little more stressful and a little more grip oriented in the gi versus no gi.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, now I'm only doing no-gi submission grappling now. Here with the gym I found, it's been epic. 4 days a week of just that. Not having to worry about doing gi. Not having to worry about my hands getting destroyed in the gi. And I don't have I know what you mean by obviously doing a lot of gi. Your fingers get pretty wrecked and your grip can take it. But just from doing the no-gi stuff, it's been nice. Like, my hands don't feel wasted, and I can go do whatever I need to do in the gym as well, and I don't have that fatigue.
Yeah, it's interesting because I started off at Gracie University by my house, and they closed during COVID. And we were just one stripe white belts, and we're like, man, this sucks. Like, we can't train now. So we started training in my garage, and we did everything off of Henner and Hudon's videos. And then we tested for they call it combatives belt. And a combatives belt is like a rookie blue belt. Like, you're good enough to be a rookie blue belt. And they're very, very strict on letting you roll until you have that combatives belt, because a lot of places just throw you to the wolves, and you don't know how to defend yourself. You don't know any of the moves, no elbow escapes, nothing. And you just kind of figure it out as you go. Well, this style, 6 to 8 months, you do this combatives, or this, white belt combatives type class, and then you're for the most part ready to roll after that. So you get your combatives belt, your rookie stripe. It's like a blue stripe with a white belt, and so we passed. And when we passed the test, we became combatives belts. Then we kept rolling in my garage with the instructors. There was 12 guys who would show up every other night. We got good enough, and we got promoted to our blue belts by the instructors, and so that's how it started. Now, then the whole place just closed down again, and our place closed, and people stopped coming to the garage. I'm like, what do I do? And then I started going to 10th Planet, and that's when I started doing all the no-gi stuff, because 10th Planet was open. It was by my house, and what I was getting at is we talk about gi versus no-gi. Is the elbow escapes in no-gi are different than the elbow escapes in gi, right? Because if you're elbow escaping in gi, I got to have that head control to keep him close to me so he doesn't try and choke me with a lapel, right? With a no-gi, I can get both my hands down on his hip and be able to bridge and get out like that without having to worry about getting my neck choked by the gi. So little things like that is different, and but I really enjoy it. I got to transition. It was hard for me to transition when I started going to 10th Planet of grabbing things, because I would still grab rash guards and things because I was used to doing that. I had to stop doing that.
No, that's funny. How would your training in the gym then change if you were preparing for a competition?
If I was preparing for a jiu-jitsu competition? Well, yep. I would actually do it very much like a periodization plan. If I was doing a traditional type training, what I'm doing now, I guess you could say, is I would definitely have a cycle leading up to my competition. Like, if I was 13 weeks out, I'd have a specific cycle where we would run them in 4-week increments. So going back to how I prepare for a competition, I would have basically a 13-week cycle, and we would run them in 4-week increments, or a 13-week plan with 4-week cycles. And I would consider my first cycle my base cycle, where it's a little bit higher volume and medium intensity. And each week within that cycle, that first cycle, would have a theme. The first thing would be a base week, which is about medium volume, medium intensity. The second week, I would increase the intensity a little bit and increase the volume. The third week, I would completely unload. So that means maybe I might spar 2 rounds instead of 6 rounds, or whatever you want to say. And then the fourth week would be more of a performance week, where my intensity's up, volume's a little bit lower, but I'm rolling really hard, really aggressively, and hopefully I'm executing everything very, very good. Then I would repeat that again the next 4-week cycle, and that would be basically I guess you'd want to say a strength development cycle. And so the first cycle was volume, the second week cycle was strength development, and I would drop my volume a little bit, increase the intensity as far as lifting and training goes, and I would follow that same pattern of the weeks: base, volume, unload, perform. And then the last 4 weeks, I would consider that neural training. So I understand maybe you could argue that jiu-jitsu and grappling, there are bursts, and you got to do different type of explosive bursts. So you definitely need a good nervous system to be able to handle it, but you also need very good, cardio as well. But I would obviously drop the volume even more, increase the intensity even more, and my rolling going into a competition, I would try and be as fresh as possible. I wouldn't be, rolling 6 rounds a day or training 2 hours a day. I'd cut it down, because at this point I should already know how to do, and do what I'm doing, and be very specific what I'm doing, with no drilling, none of that stuff, just straight rolling and trying to be fresh and whatnot. And then 1 week out, I call that my prep week, and that would be medium volume, medium intensity, be as fresh as possible, and then week 14 would be compete. So does that make sense? So we have that We have the 3 cycles. The first 4-week cycle is volume. The second is strength development. The third is neural training, which is very much like an Olympic lifting type setup. And that I got this style from Coach Conroy. Are you familiar with Coach Conroy, USA Weightlifting?
No, I don't.
He's out of Idaho. But that's how I would set it up. And then within those weeks, we have theme weeks. We have a base week, a performance or a volume week, an unload week, and a performance week for each of those cycles. That unload week is very, very important. You always, every 2 weeks, you get to unload a little bit and feel good. And it kind of mimics the way you're going to feel in competition in a sense, because you're going to be unloaded. So it kind of mimics that and gives you a chance to recover. So that's how I would do it. Now, as I had more experience, I might adjust things, but to start a starting point, that's what it would be.
Nice. I like how you mentioned about manipulating the sparring with the live rolling stuff, and I wanted to get your take maybe on this. For people who maybe they compete, maybe they don't, whatever, but maybe just for longevity on the mats. Obviously, if you wanted to, you could go every jiu-jitsu class you go to, you could smash yourself and just roll like 5 rounds to the death and walk out there wiped. Obviously, in the long term, it's going to take its toll on the body, toll on injuries, all sorts of things going on. So, I guess just from a general longevity standpoint, do you have any maybe advice or tips for anyone of how they can manipulate, I guess, rounds they roll, intensity, and things like that, from maybe day to day and week to week?
My thought is that for me personally, I'm older, so it's a little bit different, I'd imagine. But I think drilling or flow rolling twice a week and rolling hard twice a week, it has seemed to work really, really good for me right now. I've been doing that right now. And that's basically been the best I've felt my body. Like, I don't feel like a truck hit me after every jiu-jitsu session.
Yeah.
Before, when you roll hard for 5 rounds every single day, like every day it just adds up. Everything adds up, and you feel like a truck hits you worse and worse every single day. But now it's kind of like Monday is more of a roll hard day. Tuesday is more of a flow type day and drill type day. Wednesday, roll hard. Thursday, more of a drill type day, and then you get to recover over the weekend if you don't go to any class over the weekend. So that's my best advice, but that's from my experience. So that's what's worked best for me.
Yeah, I found similar. Like back in maybe 4 or 5 years ago now, I was at class 4 or 5 times a week, and after every class, it was just like hard rolling multiple rounds. And yeah, I know you felt like the truck hit you. Now, what's great about where I'm training now, it's only rolling after the class if you want to. So I've been able to control kind of what days I'm doing what. So Mondays, you mentioned I roll a little harder, maybe a couple more rounds. Tuesday, Thursday, I might not even roll any rounds, or maybe just roll 1 light round. And then Friday, I know it's positional sparring day, and that's just an hour. I know that's my hard day. So I can almost plan my week to the point now where I know Friday's the hard day, that's all good, because all the other days can kind of be a little easier, and I don't have to be stupid about how much I'm going to do each day.
Yeah, and even then, like say for example, Friday's an open mat. So if you're still feeling good on Friday, maybe you go and get another. If you're feeling good,
yeah, exactly.
Go and get a couple rounds in an open mat. If you don't, then you don't, right? So it kind of works out good that way. I think it also depends on the school. I've been to 3 different schools now.
Yeah,
Gracie isn't like the way we do things isn't as aggressive as far as drilling type stuff. Like you drill things, but they want everything done very deliberately and very technical. 10th Planet is very technical as well from my experience there, but we also get after it at the end when we roll. Checkmat, I think, is the most aggressive that I've been to. I've only was there a few times, but they would teach you a move, like a move from guard or something, and they say, okay, we're going to drill now. You cannot let anybody get past your guard. If they get past your guard or submit you, then you stay on the mat, they get off, and you got to survive as long as you can. And you just keep rotating. I was like, my first day there, I'm like, holy crap. And I went against a few higher belts than me, and I passed their guard, and I submitted one of them, and it was like, okay. And then they just kept coming, and it was like, I know what these guys are doing now. These guys were saving a little bit of energy. That's why I was able to get past their guard and beat them a little bit, because they knew how long this was going to last. And then after that, 15 minutes of that, then it's like, okay, now we roll. And at that point, you're like, oh, my God. So at least in my experience, Checkmat has been the most aggressive as far as wearing you down and making you get after it at the end.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely different cultures and different gyms, and especially even somewhere like, I guess, the more traditional Brazilian style gyms as well often have really hard rounds near the end of class, and a lot of them, and sometimes extra that's one thing I really don't like about some gyms when they make you do extra like conditioning and stuff, push-ups and runs. Like, I'll do it in my own time.
Yeah.
Like, I want to learn while I'm here, and I can do that whenever else.
Exactly, and in relation to the whole different school thing, is how they promote is extremely interesting too. At 10th Planet, I felt that the blue belts are actually, they're all about equal, right? And they have purple belts who are really, really good, and they have white belts that are really good that aren't blue belts yet, but maybe probably are technically as good as blue belts. And people listening who may be a white belt, you can definitely tell a difference between a purple belt, a blue belt, a white belt. At least in my experience, you can. And then you go to a different school, and you have you roll against a brown belt, and he's not very good. You think this guy's not that good, or maybe even a black belt, and they're not that good. But then you get a purple belt who's an absolute murderer, and you're like, man, this guy, like, how's this possible? You're a black belt, you're a brown belt. This purple belt is just destroying everybody. So I guess what I'm saying is that I guess it really doesn't matter what belt you are, typically, because isn't Nicky Rod, isn't he still a brown belt? They call him the black belt slayer.
I don't even know what belt he is.
Yeah. So I think they call him the black belt slayer because he's still a brown belt, I think. But obviously he was in the ADCC final, so he's pretty good.
Must be sandbagging.
Yeah.
Cody Jones is sandbagging.
And it's great too because like Tom Hardy just got a bunch of promoted our sport a little bit by the tournament he was in, and I saw a bunch of memes on Instagram and stuff. It had all the reporters with Tom Hardy after he won his, and you got Gordon Ryan, the greatest guy, the king right now, and the best in the world, and maybe the greatest of all time. You could say, and no one even cares outside of our world, but everybody outside of the world cares about Tom Hardy being a blue belt and winning a blue belt tournament. So that's kind of interesting.
That's funny. Do you have any thoughts maybe on extra conditioning off the mats? Do you see a place for it? Is that something you think people should spend their time off the mats doing, or should basically most of the conditioning come from the stuff they were doing in clubs?
Well, I think the specific conditioning, yes, comes from the mats. But one thing that really has helped me is I mentioned I lift on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays typically. Those are my lifting sessions. Mm-hmm. Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, I typically do some type of cardio session. And my favorite, well, not my favorite, but my favorite thing that carries over is the assault bike.
Yeah.
And I do intervals on the assault bike. So I'll have like a 5-minute round, and I'll go 20 seconds as hard as I can go, and then 10 seconds rest. Like, I'm still pedaling and stuff. So if you really think about it, it's very much like jiu-jitsu where, okay, all right, I'm pinned now. I got to think about how I'm going to get out. Or I mount to this guy. What's my next move going to be? What's my next setup going to be? It's very much like that. So I'll do that for 5 minutes, and then I'll rest for a minute, and then I'll do it for another 5 minutes. So I'll rest for a minute. I'll do 6 rounds of that.
On Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, 6 rounds.
What's that?
On Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, you'll do 6 rounds.
5 to 6, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, sometimes if I'm feeling like I'm a little beat up, I might use the rower instead because I feel the rower is a little bit easier than the assault bike. But that type of interval stuff, that's how I do it. I do it in 5-minute increments, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off. And I look at my wattage. I try to keep my wattage above a certain time or above a certain wattage for the 20 seconds. And then I try and limit how low I go on that rest. So for that 20 seconds, I might try and be over 60 on the watts in the assault bike or over 65 or 70. And then while I'm resting and pedaling still for those 10 seconds, I'm going to want to try and keep it above 50 is basically what it's at. Because there's a big difference between 50 and 65 or 50 and 70 in my experience on the assault bike. So
have you found you're able to hold higher wattage now that you've been doing it for a while on your own tools?
Absolutely, and even more, I do some Zone 2 training as well. And one thing, I'm glad you mentioned this because I want to talk about this a little bit, is I was doing my Zone 2 training, and that's basically I go 45 minutes, and I keep track of how many watts I can generate the whole time, the consistent time of 45 minutes, and my heart rate stays in Zone 2, so 137. For me, it's 137. Stay right at the edge of Zone 2. And so I was doing really, really good, and then I got COVID, and I had dodged it for 2.5, 3 years. And I was able to keep my wattage like at 52 or 53 for a long period of time for that 45 minutes. And then after I got COVID, my first workout back, I could only manage like 46 or 45. So it dropped my cardio way down just after, 4 or 5 days of COVID. So it's been a long process, but I built it back up. But what I do notice rolling wise is cardio wise, I'm okay. But it seems like when people put pressure on me now, side control, whatever, it affects me far more. And other people who have gotten COVID have told me the same thing, where sometimes they had to tap under pressure after they've had COVID because they couldn't breathe as effectively. You can't, it's hard to breathe anyways when you're under pressure like that, but it's far worse now. And I've experienced that now. And the only excuse I have is that I chalk up to COVID because I'm in a little bit better shape as far as my wattage goes, both zone 2 and on the whole interval training. So, that's kind of an interesting thing to look at as far as the side effects COVID may have on you, or it also depends on what person. Because what's his face, Chimia have had issues too. I think with the whole COVID thing, from what I've heard.
Yeah. How long did it take you to bring back your cardio, your performance?
3 months.
God,
so long, I got it in June. So July, August, September. At the end of September, I was back. So 3 months. Yeah, 3 months.
Right. Yeah. In that time, then, I guess what did you do in that time to bring yourself back without kind of putting yourself back in the hole?
I did more zone 2 training than I did my interval training. Because that was important for me to be able to get my cardio up as far as the zone 2 part goes. So I would do that every other day and stick with that. But that's basically all I did. And there's a doctor named Dr. Michael Joyner, and he's at the Mayo Clinic, and he's part of the Gain Network as well with Vern Gambetta.
Yeah.
And I sent a message, I said, hey, Dr. Joyner, I said, here's the deal. I got COVID and this drops way down. I go, is this normal? He said, yeah, we're seeing it all over the place. So just keep working on doing what you're doing, keep working back up, and it'll come back. And so it finally did. The only effects I have, like I said, is when I'm under more pressure. When I'm under normal pressure from the same people now, it's just more pressure. And to me, I don't think they've gotten better at putting pressure on. I just think that whenever I get in that position, it's worse for me now. Hopefully it goes away.
So it's still now the pressure is tough.
When they're on top of me, like when they're on side control, putting hard pressure on me, or knee on belly, things like that, it's a little bit tougher for me now than it used to be. Like I used to be able to really relax, but now it's a little bit tougher as far as breathing. I can't explain the difference in the feeling, but it's definitely there, Because I used to pride myself.
That's interesting.
I could take all the pressure you want to give me. Maybe not against like Gordon Ryan or one of those guys, but against the guys we roll against, I could take anything you have. But now it's like, man, this sucks. This really sucks. I got to get out from underneath here. And so because of that, you can't relax as long and try to figure out your way out. You got to burst real fast and try to elbow escape or roll or whatever you can do to get out of that. So hopefully it goes away. I've felt that I've gotten better out the last number of weeks. It won't like it used to happen maybe the first 2 or 3 rounds, but now I'm able to get the first 2 or 3 rounds, and then round 4 or 5 it starts to happen more. So I think I'm getting better. But that's part of the effect. My college coach Glenn McAtee, who's also a jiu-jitsu practitioner, he told me it's the same thing. He's felt the same way. So.
Wow. Hopefully that comes right. But I guess you mentioned because you trained in your garage during some of the lockdowns, so you obviously have mats in your garage there too. Have you played around with solo drills, shadow wrestling, and things like that for extra conditioning?
Well, I got a dummy that I put towels into and made a dummy, and so I feel a lot of people watch these crazy YouTube things and these crazy Instagram reels of guys working on different moves, and I look at them, and as a coach, and you're a coach, like you could say, well, that seems pretty practical. That doesn't seem practical at all, because lots of times people are just laying there and doing, just letting them do whatever they want to them when they do that fancy move. So I drill things on that dummy that I feel is practical, and it works more often than not when I drill it, and then it's kind of, for me, it's like, for example, a side control escape. I got to watch him do it first. So one of them that I just used the other night that I hadn't used before is I get my arm locked in underneath his far hip that's on top of me, and I take my other arm and I trap it around the top of his head, and I roll him, and it worked like it was like a charm. I had never tried it like that before, and it worked like a charm. And I got that from an Instagram reel that I drilled over and over in my garage. There's one, and I'm fortunate. My wife's a really cool person, and she'll train with me every now and then. She's not a jiu-jitsu person, but she'll go out and she'll train with me, and I'll teach her some stuff.
Nice.
But recently, the trap and roll is the most basic thing you can learn, right? This might be the first thing you learn, at least in our school. It's the first thing you learn. It's the most basic thing to escape things or escape mount. And typically, when you try and trap and roll an experienced person, like, it's not going to work because they know how to base out and hook their legs in underneath your legs, etc. So recently, the new Gracie school I'm at, like, instructor's like, look, there's a sweet spot. So if you hit that sweet spot, they can't stop it. And he goes, if you don't believe me, look at Huron versus Galvao. When Huron did Galvao, Huron took the fight in short notice, and they said, look, you can't let him mount you. And I guess Huron said that, and this is secondhand knowledge. I'm not saying I know what he was saying, but the story is that Huron goes, I'm going to let him do whatever he wants to me to prove that our school stuff type works, like this trap and roll stuff works. And so I think it's like 12 minutes of the match. If you go look at the match, Huron versus Galvao gets trap and rolled by Huron, right? And so that was proof that there is definitely a sweet spot. And so the other night I was rolling with the instructor, and I hit the sweet spot. Like, he goes, oh, and as I was trap and rolling him, he was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm getting rolled by you, right? So, because obviously he's a higher level than I am. So I drilled that over and over again. So there's that saying, drillers make killers. Well, like, it definitely helps. But as far as conditioning goes, I just do my interval stuff, and I do the rolling on the mat. And the one last thing I'll say that we do is we have a specific curriculum in the combatives course in that school, and we have a sheet of all the mount techniques you need to know, all the side control techniques, all the guard techniques you need to know. And what we'll do is, it's usually about 5 minutes of technique, and we'll go through every single move for 5 minutes before class starts. And sometimes we'll get through 10 to 12 minutes of it. Sometimes we'll get through all of it before the instructor starts. But that's a very much a conditioning type aspect too, because we're doing all those moves really fast in a row, and we're drilling at the same time. So it kind of gets the best of both worlds.
Nice. That's a good way to end this as well. I mean, I guess for people listening to this would be probably one of the more practical episodes we've had too, which is great. So people can kind of take a lot of this information and try and assimilate it how they want to. But if people want to learn more about you, maybe what you're doing and things like that, where can they find you? On
Instagram, Nick_G_Garcia. My business account is at Garcia Performance, or Garcia Perform, excuse me, on Instagram. Twitter, same thing, at Nick_G_Garcia. And I have a small website, GarciaPerformance.com, that Hammer Media also runs that site for me. So,
nice.
But that's where you find me. And if you send me an email, I might not get back. I usually get back within the day. But if it's kind of a very deep question type email, like, I'm going to wait until I have time so I can answer it in the exact detail that you asked me, and so I make sure you get everything you asked for.
Yeah, we should actually mention on HMMR Media, Nick's got a whole bunch of, I guess, resources on there too from all different training stuff. So
yeah, we have basically an exercise library on there that is separated by bilateral, unilateral, explosive, by all the exercise classifications that I talked about earlier. We have a core one that says, okay, transverse core, frontal core, sagittal core, et cetera, complexes, circuits. So there's a membership fee, and I'm not sure what that is because Martin runs that. But there's articles not just on strength and conditioning, but on sports psychology, on sprinting, etc.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should say your jump circuit video. I've been using since you put that out. I've been using those jump circuits for years.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
That's awesome. That's all right. I completely forgot about that now. I was like, yeah, shit. That's like my level 1 now. Level 1 preparation for whatever it is as we progress through more ballistic and plyometric stuff. Like my level 1 is jump circuits, and I've kind of modified and made my own different ones now.
But the concept, the concept's nice. Good. And like I said, we talked about base volume, or we talked about volume cycle, and then a strength development cycle, then a neural cycle. That jump circuit stuff, that stuff is in the volume cycle, the first one to prepare us for the strength development cycle, which typically we do a lot of box jumps during that time. And then our neural training is we combine the jumps with a sprint, or the med ball throws with a jump, or the med balls with a sprint. So that's our normal type training. So there's a progression to everything, and all that stuff's on there.
Nice. I actually need to go back through some of the HMMR stuff and see and rewatch a whole bunch of things on there, I think. He just reminded me. Oh, perfect. No, thank you for coming on, Nick. I really appreciate it. And if anyone wants to get in touch with Nick, you can find him on his Instagram. I'll have everything down in the description as well.
But all right, thanks for your time, and I enjoy being practical. I'm not really a scientist, but I know good things when I see them.
Perfect.